Stop a prehistoric flesh-eating monster with a nuclear bomb inside of it that is about to start its world destruction tour right in your backyard. It will not stop until it kills your friends, family, and even your daughter, turning her into ground-up flesh. And you'll have to use the power of SEMEN and a whole lot of oral skills to save your country. If you watch till the end, I'll show you how to beat Godzilla in Godzilla Minus One. This guy's one mistake is about to get 10 million people killed, including dead Japanese babies. More on that later. Koichi here is the world's best kamikaze fighter pilot because he's still alive. Wah, wah. Knowing that the war is about to be over, he makes an emergency landing at this mini repair field, and he tells their top mechanic here named Tachibana that he thinks something is wrong with the plane and it's just not working, being a dirty little liar. So he tries to play it cool while they look through it for problems. He swears up and down that he's telling the truth and was totally looking forward to dying for his country. But Tachibana has a heart-to-heart with him in private, revealing he knows he's full of shit but understands risking his life now is pointless, agreeing to keep his secret. Koichi then spots deep-sea fish floating in the water and thinks nothing of it. But this move right now has just cost the lives of everyone on this island and Japan. That night, everyone chills out when they hear the emergency siren go off nearby. They think it's an air raid, but it's so much worse. And suddenly, a prehistoric roar shakes the whole area. This soldier sees shit that shouldn't be legal and gets freaking destroyed by this unknown flesh-eating monster, while the others stare in crippling fear. Future dead guy over here tells them one of the island locals warned him about this monster. Fishes floating in the area is a sign that he's near, and he's known as Godzilla. The men quickly hide in this trench, and Tachibana spots a nearby plane with 20mm guns. Hoo-hoo! He orders puss boy Koichi to sneak into it, so he makes his way to the cockpit with the monster in his crosshairs, but chokes at the last minute, watching it walk past him. Not knowing what to do, the others get scared and start firing their weapons out of fear, pissing Godzilla off so much that it kills them all in a rage. Okay, we are about to die, but we could actually survive this by just using simple perception, screwing over our friends, and using something known as apparent death strategy. Even if we didn't know what this thing was, we could have judged the most notable characteristics of this creature, like its head, neck, trunk, and tail, to make a logical decision and survive. Because straight off the bat, this thing looks like a reptile, which are cold-blooded creatures that cannot generate their own body heat and regulate it by literally changing their environment. Unlike warm-blooded creatures that rely on a lot of food to survive because they rely on producing their own heat from the food they eat, this means that since Godzilla is likely cold-blooded and doesn't need much food, there is a chance we can get out of this alive. Based on the noticeable signs, we could have easily figured out its patterns. Future dead guy here said, deep sea fish floating in the water is a sign that this monster was near. And not only did we see this sign earlier, but we saw their stomach expand, likely due to decompression, which is a sign that fish got dragged up from the bottom of the ocean when Godzilla surfaced. Dying from surfacing too quickly can also happen to divers when they decompress too quickly, which can lead to dissolved gases, mainly nitrogen, that comes out through their bloodstream, forming bubbles in the circulation. And seeing all of this earlier means that Godzilla was in the area for a while but still chose not to attack us. And since reptiles are a weight in pounds type of predator, and when left with no other choice will defend itself by force, like now, this means that this creature was in the area during this period just chilling and only attacked just now, the moment that guy shined light into his face. After that initial forbidden aggression, Godzilla was just chilling when he could have just as easily mowed us down like a killer earlier. This is our best sign that it is not actively trying to hunt to eat, but it's scanning territory to show dominance, which we can use to our advantage using what some animals use called apparent death strategy. As Koichi in this moment, I would first take this knife, but would not run to the plane, frick that. I would ask to borrow a friend for extra help to bring with me for the big dirty plan. And then we're gonna low crawl past the plane looking as little dominant as possible and aim to position myself behind this tent. However, at this moment, I would then stab my friend and wait for Godzilla to pass, and until it reaches our friends or our friends fire back first, as they would make the perfect distraction for us and would allow us to gut our dead friend during the chaos so we can cover ourselves in his organs. Disgusting, I know, but just like how humans don't want to eat spoiled food, most animals also don't want to eat spoiled food unless they're a scavenger type predator, which Godzilla is likely not based on his design. Covering ourselves in shit would give us a higher chance that it doesn't even want to touch us and allow us to play dead while he kills the rest of our comrades, showing off territorial dominance, which means there's a good chance we could literally slip past him and come out of this alive until he dives back into the ocean. Godzilla goes apeshit as Koichi tries to escape, getting knocked out from the explosion and passes out. He wakes up the next day unharmed, finding out all of his friends are dead except for Tachibana, but he's not happy with him and blames everyone's death on Koichi's cowardice. After the war, everyone heads back home, but Tachibana hands Koichi's photos of the dead soldier's family. He soon reaches his hometown, seeing it in ruins. This woman named Sumiko mistakes him for someone else, but realizes he's a kamikaze pilot that's still alive. Whoops. And pretty much blames everyone's death here on his butt too. So Koichi's bad luck continues as he finds out his parents and everyone he knows has also died. Cute. cue depression. The next day, Koichi eats breakfast, but sees a thief pass by him, handing him her baby, while she runs off to hide, turning him into a baby daddy for a tiny bit, until he decides to try looking for the mother. Giving up, waiting for him to come to her, she thanks him for helping her out, but then decides to follow him back home, introducing herself as Noriko and baby. Koichi tells her to get lost, but she says they will die if he leaves them all alone. Feeling guilty, he lets her come with him, and she pulls her way back at his house and cooks them food. But the twists continue. Koichi finds out this baby isn't even hers, and her friend left it to her before she died. They quickly eat and pass out before Koichi can kick them out. They start living together for the next year in 1946, as Koichi finally scores a new job, promising him a lot of money. Koichi finds out that the pay is high because he'll have to clear landmines in the water left behind during the war, because that's very safe. She thinks it's way too risky, but Koichi says they don't have a choice, but not to worry because they will use boats that are specially designed to avoid the magnetic mines. So he's basically going to be riding one boat, right? The next day he shows up to his new job and sees his new sweet ride, meeting these ex-Navy crewmates, the doc, the captain, and this kid. Doc tells Koichi this boat is made up of wood. Haha, called it. They'll all be able to avoid any magnetic landmines. Amazing. They head off into the ocean, tag teaming with another boat and start combing the sea. They secure this landmine and blast it, and Koichi ends up fitting the role perfectly, and everyone has a blast literally over the next few months. It's now July 1946, while the US military conducts more nuclear tests across from the Sea of Japan, awakening Koichi's worst nightmare all over again. Soon after, the US Navy starts getting reports of something sinister being spotted around Japan, and predict it will reach Japan's Kanto region within a few weeks. However, because they're dealing with the Soviets, they basically tell Japan, yeah, you're gonna have to handle this yourself. Meanwhile, Japan begins to rebuild itself, and Koichi's co-workers have come over for dinner, but find out that Noriko and Koichi aren't married and this kid isn't theirs. They think fate brought them all together, and Koichi should accept it, but then he just gets really annoyed. One day, Koichi comes back home and finds out Noriko has gotten a new job in the town next door. Koichi thinks he's not making enough, but she just wants to be self-sufficient and hints that he will never find a wife if she's always around, while Sumiko can babysit. A few months later, Koichi's crew, well actually 1 year later, it's now 1947, and find a battleship destroyed in the water. They think no normal creature could have done this, and Doc reveals to them that they've been given new orders by the government because a type of monster has been spotted in the sea. Based on the Doc's description, Koichi thinks it's his mortal enemy, but somehow he's now gotten even bigger. He finally reveals to everyone what he saw during the war, and Doc tells them their country is sending a special boat from Singapore to help them, and their team has been ordered to stall for time until the monster gets here, using these 2 minds that they have. Great. Oh, and they find out Koichi was a kamikaze pilot, blah blah blah, not important. The crew prepares for possible contact with the monster, as Koichi then spots deep sea fish floating in the water and realizes they're fudged. They sound the alarm. The captain tells them to get the mines ready. Koichi thinks they should retreat, but the captain says they need to wait for their special destroyer ship to arrive. Another boat in the area challenges Koichi's captain on who can catch the monster first, and everyone has a great laugh. Suddenly, Godzilla swarms the other boat and swiftly destroys it with ease, shocking Koichi's crew. Karma's the bitch. The captain decides to retreat as they see Godzilla swim towards them. Knowing their end is likely near, they quickly drop one mine at Godzilla, but nothing happens, and it only pisses him off, gaining speed. Koichi takes point and fires rounds at it. Doc quickly comes up with a plan, and they ready the second mine, this time aiming for Godzilla's mouth. Trying to hit the switch, they find out the wire has been cut. Shit. Desperate, Koichi starts blasting away, but aims for Godzilla's mouth, hitting and exploding its face off. And they think, whew, thank God he is dead. But then his face starts, regenerating? Oh shit. He then gets up, towering above them, and both sides know what's about to happen. Okay, while the situation looks dire, I would utilize the same tactics that a mosquito uses when they fly past your face. Let me explain. Godzilla, since the beginning, has basically looked at us like we're ants that walked into his cereal bowl. Even though we're pressed for time, wasting one of our only bombs without thinking was really stupid, especially considering it was pretty obvious that this beast at this moment right now is basically a giant oversized crocodile looking thing. And those things are mostly exposed around the belly area, while the outer shell is made of basically a bony armor type of plate that can actually stop small bullets from penetrating it. And relatively speaking, if a crocodile's scaly back can stop a whole bullet, this means it wasn't hard to assume that blowing a bomb on Godzilla's scaly back, which is a billion times stronger, wouldn't have done shit. Being in a bad situation like this, there was really only a few things these guys could have done, and they didn't even do that right. If I was them, I would have specifically aimed for Godzilla's eyes during the chase, instead of just taking random shots, as this would have at the very least been able to slow him down more effectively, aiming at his head both when exposed and below the water to increase our chances of hitting his eyes. Aside from his mouth that's got scary ass teeth, his eyeballs were the only exposed soft tissue area that was exposed, and even if they couldn't stop him, they could have at least done this to slow him down better. If this didn't work as Koichi, I would have saved everyone's memories by telling their families that they went out like heroes. heroes. Because here's how I would ditch them in order to survive. I would have told the group to release the first or final bomb to drop it at Godzilla, but not for the reason you think. Similar to sharks in a small boat, not getting back to shore in time means that our best bet would have been to use evasive tactics. Sharks don't attack people unless they get in their way, and this is not blind luck. It's because they've evolved for millions of years before humans existed, and therefore humans aren't a part of a shark's diet and rarely feed on them. And if you notice, Godzilla till now has just acted like we're ants in his way. We're not even on his radar, and from this design, it's likely he has been here way before humans have. I would have stabbed one of our guys the moment the bomb exploded in Godzilla's face, before jumping off of the now stopped boat. And this would have allowed us to gain some distance parallel from the boat, which was Godzilla's main target anyways. Godzilla at this moment, either not moving or being momentarily confused, would have stopped the wave's currents around him by not swimming, which means we wouldn't have risked getting sucked into him by being in the water. And means we could have, in fact, sneakily tried to just float past him like the insignificant bug that we are, while we watch our crewmates die for a noble cause, if their families ask. Godzilla is about to fudge them up when he gets hit by the special destroyer. Finally arriving to save the day, they start blasting Godzilla, distracting him, and he dives into the water heading straight for them, climbing on top of them and rips their heart out. The ship fires a final time at Godzilla, causing him to collapse into the water, but the sea starts glowing a radioactive blue as a single ray blasts through the boat, causing everything to explode, knocking Koichi out again from the shockwave while Godzilla swims away, not giving an F. A little later, Koichi wakes up in the hospital with his crewmates, and he tells them it's only a matter of time before Godzilla makes landfall. But the doc says the special boat from Singapore has been completely destroyed, and the government has decided to not tell the public about Godzilla to prevent them from panicking. That night, Noriko can tell Koichi's been acting different and asks him what's really going on, because his PTSD self never tells her shit. Koichi finally reveals his past life as a disgraced kamikaze pilot and tells her what happened that night when everyone died, and he's still dealing with it. The next day, the military gets word that Godzilla has destroyed another ship and predict Godzilla is about to hit Tokyo Bay. They tried to prepare sea defenses but failed to stop Godzilla and declared that it will soon arrive at Shinagawa and there's nothing they can do. Back in Tokyo, Koichi is hanging out with Baby when they hear the sirens blast off. The radio news tells everyone that a giant creature is headed for Ginza and will reach them soon and orders everyone to evacuate, but realizes, oh shit, that's where Noriko is working. Meanwhile, in Ginza, Noriko is on the train when she starts hearing rumbles and distant screams. Looking out her window, she sees Godzilla in the flesh and it chomps down on their train, destroying it until only Noriko's compartment is the last one. She hangs on for dear life but spots the fountain below, jumping down to safety. Exiting the pond, the streets are flooded with panic and she gets knocked down by the crowd. Godzilla fast approaches and she's about to be stepped on mummy style when Koichi shows up to rescue her. Godzilla gets hit by military tanks in the distance. Pissing it off, it starts charging up, emitting energy from its tail to its body, and it blasts its nuclear breath at the tanks, causing a horrifying explosion 5 seconds to impact. Noriko quickly pushes Koichi into the small alley, saving him from the violent blast as everything around him implodes. Okay, everyone here is so dumb because the clues leading up to this were so obvious. Based on the signs, it's clear that Godzilla was just going around swinging his big D energy with no real strategy. This means for starters, despite how scary it looked, and it does look scary, there was actually an easy way to escape, and this would have been by not running in front of Godzilla, that's an idea, during this moment, and go parallel to him, as this would have been the fastest way to escape. Koichi, of everyone here, knows the threat of Godzilla the most, based on how he met him before, and knew to a degree how he operates. This means he knew it was only a matter of time until he got pissed off enough at something to let out the big guns, which unlike the rest of the city, Koichi knew about this beforehand. The only thing that could have made this situation survivable is the fact that unlike a standard nuclear blast, Godzilla's blast was directed at the humans on the ground. This is important because if a nuclear blast is exploded in the air, the lethal blast and thermal effects proportionally would scale much more rapidly than lethal radiation effects, as the initial explosive force would be higher. In the sky, there'll be less shit to stop the blast from hitting you. And since it's logical that Godzilla would only waste his Trump weapon on things that pissed him off the most, like the military, it means the moment we grabbed Bay as Koichi, I would have darted 90 degrees from whichever way Godzilla was traveling to avoid the initial trample. They know it was only a matter of time before he released his big weapon. I would have taken Bay and hit between any thick concrete structures, like here. Since the concentration of many thick structures together could have lessened the airspeed and forces involved in the initial blast wind, all of which Koichi and Bay had access to in the lead up to the explosion, but chose not to act extinct because they were dumb as bricks. So maybe this is just Darwinism at play. Koichi gets back up and sees everyone around him dead except for his mortal enemy, vowing vengeance on Godzilla. Later, the news reports more than 30,000 people have been killed today, and Ginza has been shut down because of the radiation. Koichi invites his crewmates for Noriko's funeral and thinks his dead friends are punishing him because he doesn't deserve happiness. Doc approaches him and tells him he's been selected to be a part of a secret plan to defeat Godzilla, led by civilian force, and asks Koichi to join them. Everyone meets up to discuss the final plan to defeat Godzilla, all with ex-military. The big shot commander here tells them no one is coming to help them, and they must defeat Godzilla themselves. He says he's managed to get a hold of 4 destroyers, but everyone thinks they won't do shit. The Doc then reveals his plan, demonstrating with this Godzilla Ocean model. Using 2 destroyer ships, he plans to attach a tube around Godzilla that will cover him in Freon bubbles. These bubbles will basically lower the water buoyancy around Godzilla, so he will sink rapidly to the ocean floor deep within the Sagami Trench. The deepest part of the ocean near them, the rapid descent will cause the pressure to crush Godzilla to death. And people logically ask, how surefire is this plan? But the Doc says it's only a theory, which terrifies them. To make them feel better, he says they have a backup plan in case it doesn't work. Directing them to the window outside the building, Doc's team has designed a special life raft that will deploy at the bottom of the ocean if Godzilla doesn't die, pushing him back up to the surface, so if he survives the rapid descent, he won't survive the rapid ascent. That night, Koichi's team have dinner, and Doc thinks Godzilla will return because after the last attack, he has added Tokyo to his territory and should return in 10 days for some reason. They will lure him back by playing an audio of his voice they recorded during the last attack. This will make Godzilla think he has competition in the area, but the Doc says this is all just a theory, and Koichi gets worried that there are so many holes in this plan, but he recognizes it's the only one they got. He then asks for a fighter plane so he can help lure Godzilla to the location. The Doc says he will look, but thinks most planes have been decommissioned after the war. The next day, they find a plane for Koichi. How convenient. A unique short-range interceptor known as the Shinden, built to utilize hit-and-run tactics that can go over 400 knots an hour. But Koichi says it's not air-ready yet, and they need a really good mechanic to fix it, and he comes up with an idea and goes to find his old friend, not really friend, Tachibana from during the war. But he can't find his current address. He then writes a bunch of letters blaming him for the death of their teammates and sends them to his last known address, hoping he still lives there. A few more days go by and Doc says they haven't been able to locate Tachibana and should look for someone else, but Koichi begs them to wait. Later he heads back home but gets knocked out. Waking up, tied up, Tachibana has arrived and beats the shit out of him for his letters. Koichi tries to explain that he needed to lure him here because he needs his help to save the world. Against the monster they've met long ago, gunfire doesn't work, but he blasted a mine in his mouth which badly damaged him and might need his help putting a bomb inside of his plane to fly right into Godzilla's mouth. Tachibana then realizes that Koichi finally wants to be kamikaze, convincing him to show up the next day to help them for their mission. Later, Doc tells everyone they've picked up enough high radiation readings in the waters east of Hachiro. Doing the calculations, he thinks Godzilla is headed to Tokyo and will pass by Sagami Trench tomorrow at 11 a.m. The next day, Koichi leaves his baby with Sumiko and a note telling her to watch after her as he heads to the air hangar. Meeting up with Tachibana, he shows him his new kitted out plane. He's replaced the fuel tank and the fuselage with bombs. Koichi gets a little nervous and says he would like to live, but Tachibana says, living is overrated. He pulls out a drawing from his baby and tells him he's ready. Tachibana shows him the rest of the controls. Elsewhere, the other boats keep watch and notice deep sea fish floating and radio in everyone to tell him that it's nearly go time. Back in the harbor, everyone gets alerted and prepare for the attack, just as they hear an explosion in the distance, and this ship crashes into the harbor. The speaker alerts them that the underwater decoy team has been destroyed and Godzilla is headed straight for them. The others wonder what to do, but Doc tells them it's now up to Koichi to lure Godzilla to Sagami Trench, since it's their only plan, not realizing he hasn't told them about his kamikaze plan. Yeah. Koichi radios the team and flies past Godzilla, bugging the shit out of him and avoids getting hit. He successfully lures it back out into the water and right into their trap. The ships nearby prepare for the decoy ship above the water as Koichi's plane flies past it. Spotting the ship, Godzilla charges up his nuclear breath and destroys the ship, not realizing it's empty, and now realizes he won't be able to use his deadly blast for a while. The real ships nearby prepare their plan, sailing straight around Godzilla, tightening the Freon tubes around it while Koichi keeps him distracted. The ships circle around and now have surrounded Godzilla. He starts charging up his nuclear blast again, but the humans quickly turn on the Freon bubbles through the tube, instantly plunging Godzilla down the depths. He quickly reaches 1,500 meters below sea level, but the rope lines start violently shaking, and everyone prepares to switch to Plan B, deploying the air raft, sending Godzilla back up rapidly. However, the cables suddenly stop at 800 meters. They realize that Godzilla has chewed through the flotation device, still tied to their cables. The two ships try to forcefully pull him up themselves, but they don't have enough power. But the kid shows up with more civilian boats and adds extra pulling power to the two main boats. They start pulling Godzilla, bringing him back up to the surface, but they realize that he's not dead and now they're out of options. Godzilla stands up now more pissed than ever and is ready to blow them all to hell. Okay, for scientists, these guys weren't observable at all. It's noted throughout the film, Godzilla's atomic breath seemed to badly damage him, but as events progressed, the damage became less and less. This would match with species of reptiles like lizards, which grow their entire lives, and means that humans should have realized each day they waited he was only getting bigger due to natural growth, which was also sped up due to obvious radiation-induced changes. This is important because this means that even with their final plan, all the things could have gone wrong, and they could have known that even if Godzilla initially had ocean depth weakness like the rest of us, these weaknesses would eventually correct themselves due to his continuous growing and evolution adaptation. Meaning, any actual plan aside, this was an important variable they should have considered in their final plan. Suddenly, Koichi shows up from the sky, flying straight at Godzilla's mouth. He pulls on this lever as the plane crashes right into its mouth, stopping its nuclear breath as the monster's head explodes. With nowhere to go, the radiation in Godzilla's body starts piercing through his flesh, disintegrating his body. They then spot Koichi in the sky, and we find out that Tajibani created an ejection seat for him, woo! Forgiving him earlier for the events during the war. Defeating their enemy, the crew paid their respects to their fallen foe, as everyone soon returns to base safe and sound. However, Sumiko shows up with the baby, telling Koichi she just received some crazy news. Hearing this, Koichi rushes with the baby to this hospital. Seeing that Noriko is alive, she asks him if his war is finally done, making him hug her, and everyone is all happy, with no one realizing the small radiation mark on Noriko's neck. The world then celebrates being free, not realizing Godzilla's corpse has started to regenerate deep below the ocean floor. But what do you think about the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and as always, don't forget to check out our How to Beat playlist.